The conference room at Synapse Dynamics was on the 34th floor. A glass box suspended over the gray, moody waters of Seattle's Puget Sound. On a clear day, you could see the jagged peaks of the Olympic Mountains. Today, there was only a persistent drizzle, the clouds hanging so low they seemed to be weeping directly onto our windows. The atmosphere inside the room was just as tense. This was the final presentation, the culmination of a 6-month soul-crushing project codenamed Helios. I was the project manager, and I was about to either fly or fail in front of the most important people in my professional life, my brother. Leo was in the room, technically. He was in his usual spot for these kinds of meetings near the back by the coffee cart, charming the junior clients with a brilliant smile and a well-rehearsed joke. He was an account director in the sales department. His job was to get the clients in the door. My job was to do the actual work. At the head of the massive oak table sat Ms. Albright, our division's senior vice president. She was a woman who did not suffer fools, a sharp, impeccably dressed executive in her 50s, with a mind like a steel trap and a stare that could curdle milk. Ms. Hayes, yes, she said, her voice cutting through the quiet murmur. You may begin. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and began. For the next 45 minutes, I was in my element. The project was a complex logistics software overhaul for a massive shipping conglomerate. I walked them through the data, the user interface, mock-ups, the stress test results, the phased rollout plan. My presentation was clean, logical, and irrefutable. I knew this project inside and out, every line of code, every potential bottleneck. It was my baby. When I finished, a silence fell over the room. The lead client, a gruff man named Mr. Chen, stared at the final projection slide, his face unreadable. Ms. Albright just watched him, her expression a perfect, neutral mask. Finally, Mr. Chen grunted, a sound that made my stomach clench. He looked at Ms. Albright. Your team has exceeded our expectations, he said, his voice a low rumble of approval. This is good work. Very good work. We're signing off. Move forward with the deployment. A collective, silent sigh of relief went through my team. Ms. Albright allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Thank you, Richard, she said. We're pleased you're pleased. Ms. Hayes has done an exemplary job leading this initiative. The meeting broke up, a sudden explosion of handshakes and relieved chatter. I saw Leo making a beeline for Mr. Chen, clapping him on the back, his voice booming. Richard, my man, knew you'd love it. My team always delivers. My team. I felt a familiar, weary prickle of annoyance. I had managed a team of 12 engineers and designers. Leo's involvement had been a single introductory lunch 6 months ago, after the clients had been ushered out. Ms. Albright crooked a finger at me. My office, Hayes. I followed her down the hall, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm. Her office was like her, minimalist, intimidating, and with a better view than anyone else's. She didn't ask me to sit. She just stood by her window. Looking out at the rain, that was a disaster waiting to happen, you know, she said, her back to me. The Helios project. When we took it on, our internal projections gave it a 40% chance of failure. Too many moving parts, too short a timeline. I'm aware, ma'am, I said. But it didn't fail, she continued, turning to face me. Her eyes were sharp, analytical. And the reason it didn't fail is you. You kept it on budget. You managed a difficult client, and you delivered a superior product ahead of schedule. Your work is exemplary. Thank you, Ms. Albright. Don't thank me, she said, her tone brisk. I'm paying you. And I'm about to start paying you more. The senior project manager position on the Aperture Labs account has been open for a month. I've been waiting for the right person. You're the right person. The promotion is yours if you want it. I was stunned. The Aperture Labs account was the biggest, most important new client the company had landed in 5 years. It was a career-making opportunity. Yes, I breathed. Of course, yes. Thank you. Good, she said, her lips thinning into another small smile. Don't make me regret it. Your new office is on the 35th floor. HR will send you the details. I walked back to my desk in a daze, a profound, buzzing joy radiating through me. I had done it. All the late nights, the weekends spent at the office, the relentless, grinding work hit had all paid off. I felt a slap on my back that was a little too hard to be purely congratulatory. It was Leo. Heard the news, little sis, he said, his smile wide and dazzling. Senior PM, moving on up to the big leagues. I knew you had it in you. Thanks, Leo, I said, my own smile genuine. For a moment, he was just my big brother. And I was happy to share the moment with him. I mean, it's all thanks to me, really, he continued. Leaning against my cubicle wall with a practiced nonchalance, excuse me, I'm the one. Who got you the interview here 4 years ago, remember? He said with a wink, if it wasn't for my amazing eye for talent, you'd probably still be designing websites for dog walkers. You owe me big time. He was trying to make it a joke, but the undercurrent of credit-seeking was unmistakable. It was a classic Leo move. He had a way of framing every one of my successes as a direct result of his patronage. I appreciate you getting me the interview, Leo, I said, my tone a little cooler. But I'd like to think the work I've done for the past 4 years had something to do with it. Oh, totally, totally, he said, waving a dismissive hand. You're a rock star. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. Seriously. Though, you gotta slow down a little. You're making your big brother look bad. People are going to start thinking you're the talented one in the family. He laughed, a loud, forced sound, and clapped my shoulder again before swaggering off towards the sales floor. I watched him go, the joy of my promotion suddenly tainted. A fine layer of grime settling over a shiny new trophy. It was a joke. I knew it was a joke. But it was the kind of joke that held a shard of truth, the kind that pricks you and leaves a small, festering wound. For my entire life, Leo was the charming one, the popular one, the one everyone expected to succeed. I was the quiet, nerdy, responsible one who was always in his shadow. But here at Synapse Dynamics, the roles had started to reverse. Competence was undeniable, while his charm could only carry him so far. I was rising on merit, and he was treading water. And he was starting to notice later that day I moved my things into my new office. It was bigger, with a better view. My new nameplate was already on the door. Evelyn Hayes, Senior Project Manager. I ran my fingers over the crisp engraved letters. It was real. This was mine. I had earned it. I should have felt nothing but pure, unadulterated triumph. But as I looked out the window at the endless gray rain, the unsettling echo of my brothers, Joe cast a small, dark shadow over the moment. I pushed the feeling away. It was just Leo being Leo. This was my day. My success. I wouldn't let him spoil it. But the shadow lingered, a quiet, persistent warning that I chose, for the sake of a fragile family peace, to ignore. The first 3 months in my new role as senior project manager were a blur of creative energy and professional triumph. The Aperture Labs account was everything I had hoped it would be: challenging, innovative, and led by a client who valued bold ideas. My team was the best in the company, a hand-picked group of brilliant designers and strategists. We were building a massive, multi-platform digital campaign that was poised to be the biggest success story Synapse Dynamics had seen in years. For the first time in my career, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, a feeling as bright and exhilarating as the rare Seattle sun that occasionally broke through the clouds. My relationship with Leo, however, grew colder and more distant with each passing week. He was polite, but it was a brittle, formal politeness that was worse than open hostility. He never asked about my work, and when I asked about his, he would give clipped, one-word answers. Easy, if sometimes strained, sibling banter we once shared had completely evaporated. I tried to bridge the gap, inviting him for lunch or after-work drinks, but he was always busy, always had another commitment. I told myself it was just the stress of his own job, the natural drifting apart of adult siblings. Deep down, I knew it was something else. I was succeeding, and he was not. And in the zero-sum game of his ego, my victory could only be interpreted as his loss. The breaking point came at the company's quarterly all-hands meeting. The entire Seattle office, over 200 of us, were packed into a large auditorium. Ms. Albright took the stage to give her keynote address on the state of the division. "Our growth this quarter has been steady," she began, her voice crisp and commanding. "But one account in particular is not just meeting expectations. It is redefining what this company is capable of. I'm talking, of course, about Aperture Labs." A slide appeared on the giant screen behind her, emblazoned with the sleek Aperture logo. "This is the most ambitious, most integrated campaign we have ever launched," she continued. "And its early success is due to the tireless work of its team and the visionary leadership of its senior project manager." My picture, a corporate headshot I'd always hated, suddenly filled the screen. Evelyn Hayes, Senior PM. Evie's strategy and execution on this account are a model for the entire company. She has set a new standard for excellence at Synapse. The auditorium erupted in applause. My face burned with a mixture of pride and acute embarrassment. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. I tried to smile, to look grateful. My eyes scanned the crowd and found Leo. He was applauding, just like everyone else, but his smile was a grotesque, stretched-thin caricature. It didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, flat, and full of a quiet, bottomless resentment that made my blood run cold. He was looking at me, his little sister, being lauded as the future of the company, and in his eyes, I saw something that looked terrifyingly like hatred. That look haunted me for the next few days. I tried to dismiss it, to tell myself I was imagining things. But the feeling of unease lingered, a dark cloud on the horizon of my otherwise bright, sunny world. The storm broke on a Friday. I was in my office on a video call with the CEO of Aperture Labs. It's a brilliant, energetic man named Ken. We were laughing about a successful ad test, the mood light and celebratory. We were winning. Suddenly, the door to my office flew open with such force that it slammed against the wall. Ms. Albright stood in the doorway, her face pale, her expression a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. She had her phone pressed to her ear. "What do you mean you're pulling the account?" She barked into the phone, her voice shaking with a rage I had never seen before. "Richard, that's insane. After all the work we've done. No, that is absolutely unacceptable. Ken, on my video screen, looked just as confused as I felt. I quickly ended the call. I'm so sorry, Ken. I have to call you back. I stood up, my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. Ms. Albright. What's wrong? She ignored me, her focus entirely on the person on the other end of her call. There was a long pause, and then her face seemed to crumble. I see, she said, her voice now a dead, hollow whisper. Yes, I understand. She hung up, her hand dropping to her side as if the phone suddenly weighed 100 pounds. She turned to me, and her eyes, which had been full of pride just days before, were now as cold and hard as granite. Aperture Labs is gone, she said, her voice flat. They've terminated the contract, effective immediately. What? I gasped. The word a punch to the gut. Why? That's impossible. We were just on a call. Everything was perfect. Apparently not, she said, her voice dripping with ice. Ken just received a pitch presentation this morning. From Omnicorp. Omnicorp, our biggest, most ruthless rival. Their pitch, she continued, her eyes boring into me, was, and I am quoting him directly, a slide-for-slide, word-for duplicate of the confidential Q for strategy presentation you gave to the Aperture board last week. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I stared at her, my mind refusing to process the words. A duplicate, a leak. It was impossible. That presentation was stored on a secure, encrypted server. Only my team and a handful of senior executives had access. They're accusing us of a massive security breach, Ms. Albright said, her voice now a low, dangerous growl. They believe someone on your team sold our strategy to our biggest competitor. They have lost all trust in us, and they are holding you, as the lead of the project, personally responsible. The words hit me one after another, each one a physical blow. Responsible, security breach, your team. My mind reeled. Who? How? It made no sense. My team was loyal. They were brilliant. They wouldn't. The news ripped through the 35th floor like a shockwave. The cheerful, collaborative buzz of the office evaporated, replaced by a tense, tomb-like silence. People who had been congratulating me just days before now avoided my gaze. I could feel their eyes on me as I walked back too. My office, their whispers following me like a trail of smoke. Oh, wow. I was no longer the rising star. I was the prime suspect, the architect of the biggest client disaster in the company's history. I sat in my beautiful new office, the one I had been so proud of, and it now felt like a glass cage. The lights of Seattle began to twinkle on as the afternoon faded into a grim, gray evening, but I didn't see them. I just stared at my computer screen, at the files for a project that no longer existed. My career, which had seemed so bright and limitless just that morning, was now in ruins. An email popped up in my inbox. The subject line was stark. Subject: urgent meeting regarding Aperture Labs. Account from HR Department 10 internal investigation into the security breach has been launched. You are required to attend a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Please bring your company. Laptop and phone, the investigation was official, and I was the target. I was terrified. I was confused. I felt utterly, completely alone. And I had no idea that the person who had just pushed me off the cliff was the same one who was about to offer me a comforting hand on the way down. The meeting was in a windowless room on the HR floor that was unofficially known as the abattoir. It was where people got fired. The air was cold, recycled, and utterly devoid of hope. On one side of the small, sterile table sat the head of HR and a stern-looking man I didn't recognize, who introduced himself as the company's legal counsel. On the other side was a woman in her 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and an expression of complete impartiality. Her name was Ms. Davies, the head of IT security. And then there was me, the guest of honor. For 2 hours they dissected my professional life. It wasn't a conversation. It was an interrogation. They took my laptop and my phone. Handing me a temporary loaner, Ms. Davies's questions were the worst, not because they were cruel, but because they were so precise, so logical, that they made the circumstantial evidence against me seem overwhelming. Ms. Hayes, can you confirm that you were the primary author of the Q4 strategic plan for the Aperture account? Yes. And that you, as the senior project manager, had the highest level of administrative access to the secure server where these files were stored? Yes. Have you accessed these files from any non-company devices? A home computer? A personal tablet? No. Never. Are you currently experiencing any significant personal or financial difficulties that we should be aware of? The question, a standard HR query in these situations, felt like a slap in the face. They were asking if I was desperate enough to sell out my career for a payday. No, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I am not. I answered every question truthfully, but the truth felt thin and weak against the mountain of suspicion. I was the project lead. I had the access. The client was gone. It was a simple, damning equation. I walked out of that room feeling like a criminal who just hadn't been convicted yet. My isolation was immediate and absolute. The 35th floor, where I had been a celebrated leader just days before, was now a hostile territory. Colleagues who used to greet me with warm smiles now found reasons to be intensely interested in their computer screens when I walked past. Members of my own team, people I had mentored and championed, would go quiet when I entered the break room. They were being interviewed by HR. To their loyalty to me now a potential liability to their own careers. I was a leper. My failure contagious. The only person who seemed to be in my corner was Leo. He played the part of the devoted, protective older brother to perfection. He would bring me coffee in the morning, a sad, sympathetic look on his face. "You look exhausted, Evie," he'd say, his voice a low, concerned murmur. "I can't believe they're putting you through this. It's a witch hunt." He would stop by my office in the afternoon, pretending to have insider information. I was talking to my guy in sales. He told me one day, closing the door conspiratorially. He said Omnicorp was bragging about this for a week before it happened. They must have had someone on the inside, a real snake. The irony was, so thick I could have choked on it. He was the only person I could talk to, the only one who seemed to believe in my innocence. He would listen patiently as I frantically tried to figure out who could have done it. And he would gently, expertly. "So, seeds of paranoia, are you sure you can trust everyone on your team?" he asked, his expression a mask of brotherly concern. That new strategist, Ben, he always seemed a little too ambitious to me. And didn't Sarah from design used to work at Omnicorp years ago? He was a master of suggestion, never outright accusing anyone, but planting just enough doubt to make my mind spin. He was my rock and my confidant. And all the while, he was the one who had tied me to the train tracks. Worst of all, he managed my hope, slowly bleeding it dry. "Listen," he said, sitting on the edge of my desk a few days into the investigation. "I talked to my friend. In HR, it's not looking good, sis. They need a head for this. A big one. The board is furious. You're the lead, so the responsibility falls on you, whether it's fair or not. I'll do what I can. I'll talk to Albright. Put in a good word, but you should probably prepare yourself for the worst." He patted my shoulder, his touch meant to be comforting, but it felt like a grave digger measuring the width of my coffin. I spent that week in a state of constant low-grade terror. My confidence and hope eroding with every sympathetic word from my brother and every averted gaze from my colleagues. I was going to be fired. My career, the thing I had dedicated my entire adult life to building, was going to end in disgrace. The lowest point came on a Thursday night. I was at home, unable to sleep, going over every email, every meeting, every single moment of the past 3 months in my head. I was looking for a clue, a mistake, anything. But there was nothing. The plan against me was seemingly perfect. I felt a wave of utter hopelessness wash over me. Leo was right. It was over. And then in the depths of that despair, the project. Manager in me, the woman who lived and breathed data and timelines, kicked in. "It can't be perfect," a small defiant voice in my head whispered. "Every system has a flaw. Every timeline has a data point that doesn't fit." I stopped thinking like a victim and started thinking like an auditor. The breach. The leak. Omnicorp had pitched the exact cue for strategy to Aperture. That meant the final version of my presentation had to have been stolen. I had finalized that presentation on Tuesday night of last week. The client had confirmed receipt of the final file on Wednesday morning. So the leak had to have happened sometime on Tuesday night. I opened my company calendar, my heart beginning to beat a little faster. I looked at my schedule for that Tuesday, and my day was a back-to-back nightmare of meetings. But what about the night? And then I saw it. A single beautiful, glorious entry. 9 p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. Transatlantic Sync. Helios Q3 post-mortem. It was a mandatory video conference with our London office to review the project I had completed before Aperture. And listed on the attendees list, right below my name, was M. Albright. I had been on a 2-hour video call with the senior vice president of the company. A call for which there would be a digital, uneditable log. I frantically searched my email for the data forensics report HR had sent as part of the investigation. I found the key piece of information, the detail I had been too panicked to properly register before. The final malicious email containing my presentation had been sent from my account to a dummy address at 10:15 p.m. That Tuesday at 10:15 p.m., I had been on a recorded video call with my own boss. It was not possible for me to have sent that email. It was my alibi. It was the single hard data point that broke their entire narrative. A surge of adrenaline, cold and pure, washed away my despair. I didn't run to Leo with the news. A new, ugly suspicion, born of his constant manipulative support, had begun to curdle in my gut. I was on my own in this. I sat down at my laptop. My hands were perfectly steady. I was no longer a panicked victim. I was a project manager with a critical piece of exculpatory evidence. I composed a new email, my tone as cold and professional as a legal brief. To M. Albright R. Evans, HR. Davies, IT security subject. Exculpatory evidence regarding Aperture Labs breach. Dear all. In reviewing the timeline of the data breach, I have identified a critical discrepancy. The forensics report indicates the malicious email was sent from my account at 10:15 p.m. on Tuesday, August 5, as you will see from the attached meeting invitation and the system logs for the company's video conferencing software at that exact time. I was actively participating in a 2-hour mandatory video call with our London office to conduct a post-mortem on the Helios. PROJECTM's Albright was also in attendance, given that it would be physically impossible for me to have sent the email. In question, while actively engaged in this meeting, I formally request that IT security conduct a full trace on the IP address and workstation ID from which my account was accessed at that specific time. Sincerely, Evelyn Hazai attached a copy of the meeting invitation and the log file. I read the email once, then twice. It was perfect. It was irrefutable. It was a declaration of war, fought not with emotion, but with pure, cold, undeniable data. My finger hovered over the mouse. This was it. The moment I stopped being a suspect and started fighting back, I clicked send. I slept for 3 hours, a deep, dreamless, and exhausted sleep. I woke up the next morning to the gray, drizzling Seattle dawn, feeling a strange and unfamiliar sense of calm. The terror of the past week was gone, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I had laid my facts on the table. The system I had put my faith in, a system of logic, data, and evidence, would now either vindicate me or fail me completely. There was nothing left for me to do but wait for the verdict. I didn't have to wait long. At 8:45 a.m., an email from Ms. Albright's executive assistant appeared in my inbox. The subject line was simply, follow-up.ms. Albright would like to see you in her office at 9:15 a.m. Ms. Davies will be joining. My heart gave a single hard thump. Not HR, not the company lawyer. The head of IT security. This was it. I stood up, smoothed the front of my blouse, and walked out of my office, feeling the familiar weight of my colleagues' stares on my back. They thought I was walking to the gallows. I wasn't sure they were wrong. When I entered Ms. Albright's office, the atmosphere was completely different from the interrogation room. The air was still serious, but the hostility was gone. Ms. Albright was standing by the window, a cup of coffee in her hand. Ms. Davies was already seated at the conference table, her laptop open. Evie, Ms. Albright said, using my first name for the first time since I'd been promoted. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Coffee. Oh. Thank you, I said, my voice quiet. I took a seat opposite Ms. Davies. We received your email last night, Ms. Albright began, her expression unreadable. And Ms. Davies and her team have been working since midnight to follow up on your request. I'll let her walk you through what she found. Ms. Davies turned her laptop screen towards me. It displayed a complex-looking screen of system logs and network data. Ms. Hayes, she began, her tone crisp and professional. First, let me confirm that your alibi is irrefutable. Company logs confirm you were an active participant in the Helios video conference from 8:58 p.m. to 11:03 p.m. on the Tuesday in question. Your microphone was active 73% of the time. It was not physically possible for you to have been at your workstation composing and sending the email at 10:15 p.m. A wave of relief so profound it almost made me lightheaded washed over me. I felt the tension I'd been holding in my shoulders for a week begin to dissolve. I had been telling the truth, and the data had finally backed me up. Given that, Ms. Davies continued, we proceeded with the full trace you requested. We analyzed the access logs for your account at synapsedynamics.com At 10:14 p.m. on that Tuesday, your account was accessed remotely? The initial access request was not routed through the standard VPN, but through an internal administrative back channel. A sloppy but effective way to bypass the usual security flags. She pointed to a line of highlighted code on the screen. The remote access command originated from a workstation with the IP address 10.1.32.77. That IP address is hard assigned to a terminal on the 32nd floor of this building. In the sales department, my blood ran cold. The sales department. We? Then cross-reference the workstation's activity log for that time period. Ms. Davies said, her voice devoid of emotion as she delivered the kill shot. At 10:14 p.m., the workstation was actively logged in under the credentials of a single user. Oh, she clicked her mouse and a new window popped up. It was a simple damning textbox.ip address, 10.1.32.77. Active user Lazuser ID, Leo Hayesd EPRTMINT. Sales, there it was. My brother's name glowing on the screen in a stark, monospaced font, the architect of my downfall. The snake I had led into my life, who I had trusted, who had pretended to be my only ally. The proof was absolute. The digital breadcrumbs led. Directly to his door, I stared at the screen, the name, the truth. And I felt a dizzying mix of vindication and a deep, profound sadness. I had known on some level, but seeing it there so clinical and undeniable was like a punch to the gut, Ms. Albright had been silent throughout the presentation. Now she spoke, her voice a low, dangerous growl. He also made a critical error. Evie, the presentation file he attached to the email he sent to Omnicorp. It wasn't the final version. It was a draft from 3 days prior. It was missing the key market analysis data you added on the final day. It was an amateurish, incomplete copy. He was so consumed by his jealousy, he wasn't even competent enough to be a good trader. She walked over to her desk and buzzed her assistant. "Sarah, is Mr. Hayes here yet?" "Yes, ma'am," the voice on the intercom replied. "He's waiting in the reception area." Ms. Albright looked at me, her eyes no longer cold, but filled with a kind of grim, respectful fury. "Key is under the impression that you are being terminated this morning. He believes he is coming in for a final debrief on the situation. I want you to go into the adjoining conference room, the one with the one-way glass. I believe you have earned the right to witness this." I moved to the small, dark conference room, my legs feeling unsteady. I stood at the glass window, looking into Ms. Albright's office. A moment later, the door opened and Leo walked in. He was the picture of concern. He had a sad, sympathetic look on his face, a performance for my benefit, assuming I was already in the room and being fired. He saw Ms. Albright and Ms. Davies, and his expression shifted to one of grave professionalism. "Ma'am," he said, his tone somber, "I came as soon as I could. I want to say on the record that while Evie obviously made a catastrophic error, she is still my sister, and I hope the company will." "Sit down, Leo," Ms. Albright said, her voice cutting through his performance like a razor blade. He sat, his confident demeanor faltering slightly at her tone. "We have concluded our investigation into the Aperture Labs breach," she said. She turned her large monitor around to face him. On the screen was the IT report, his name and IP address highlighted in a brilliant, damning red. "Can you explain this?" I watched my brother's face. I watched the confident mask of the concerned. older brother melt away in real time. I saw the flicker of confusion, followed by a tidal wave of pure animal panic. The color drained from his face, leaving behind a pasty gray pallor. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. The digital ghost of his crime was staring back at him, and he had no alibi. I don't. He stammered, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape route. That's not possible. My computer must have been hacked. Someone must have used my login. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Davies said, her voice flat. We also have the security camera footage from the 32nd floor for that evening. It shows you entering the sales department at 9:58 p.m. and leaving at 10:22 p.m. There was no one else on the floor. Would you like me to play it for you? That was it. The final, inescapable nail in his coffin. He slumped in his chair, a broken, defeated man. The smug, charming salesman was gone, replaced by a terrified, guilty child. Ms. Albright stood up, her expression one of utter imperial disgust. Your attempt to sabotage a multi-million-dollar account and frame your own sister to do it is the single most despicable act of professional misconduct I have ever had the misfortune of witnessing in my 30-year career. She said, her voice dangerously quiet. You are fired effective immediately. Your network access has been revoked. Security is waiting outside my door. They will escort you to your desk where you will be given 5 minutes to collect your personal belongings. Then they will escort you out of this building. She pressed a button on her intercom. Security to my office, please. I watched as 2 uniformed security guards entered the room. I watched as my brother, my older brother who I had once looked up to, asked to stand and was led out of the office like a common criminal, his face a mess of shame and terror. He didn't look towards the one-way glass. He didn't know I was there. He just looked at the floor, a man completely and utterly undone by his own pathetic, jealous heart. I remained in the darkened conference room for a long time, my forehead pressed against the cool one-way glass. I watched as the 2 security guards, their presence a jarring note of institutional force in our corporate world, led my brother out of Ms. Albright's office. They didn't put a hand on him. They didn't have to. Leo's posture was one of complete and utter defeat. His shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed on the floor. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out from the Pret. Inside, I watched them ride the executive elevator down to the 32nd floor of the sales department. My floor until yesterday. From my vantage point, I had a clear panoramic view of the open plan office below. A hush fell over the entire floor as they stepped out of the elevator. The quiet, rhythmic clicking of 100 keyboards ceased. Every head, in a slow, synchronous wave, turned to watch. They escorted him to his desk, the one in the prime corner he had been so proud of. One of the guards handed him an empty cardboard box. And then came the final, most brutal act of his. Professional life, the walk of shame. I watched, my expression a neutral mask, as my brother, the man who had tried to ruin me, packed up the remnants of his life at Synapse Dynamics. A coffee mug that read World's Best Big Brother, a framed photo of our smiling parents, a stupid, bobble-headed eagle, the award for some sales competition he had won 2 years ago. He didn't look at anyone. He just moved with a frantic, jerky efficiency, his face a blotchy, humiliating red. When the box was full, the guards flanked him, and they began the long, silent walk towards the main elevators. 200 pairs of eyes followed him every step of the way. It was a corporate funeral procession, and he was the corpse. I watched until the elevator doors slid shut, erasing him from the world he had fought so hard to conquer and the world I was about to inherit. When I walked back into Ms. Albright's office, she was standing by the window, her back to me. "It's done," she said, without turning around. "I've already spoken to our legal counsel. We have enough evidence of malicious sabotage to ensure he will never work in this industry again." "Good," I said, the word feeling small and inadequate. She finally turned to face me. The hard executive mask was gone. Her expression was one of genuine weary regret. "Evie," she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it, "on behalf of this company, I want to offer you my most profound and sincere apology. We failed you. I failed you. My desire for a quick resolution made me blind to the obvious. The investigation should have focused on the data from the very beginning. The stress and the suspicion we put you under were unacceptable. You found the truth," I said. "That's what matters." "Ah, the truth is what matters," she agreed. "And the truth is, you are one of the most resilient, competent, and clear-headed managers we have. The Aperture Labs account is, of course, yours. To continue with, we've already contacted their CEO, explained the situation, and they have agreed to reinstate the contract on the condition that you remain as the sole project lead." A wave of relief so powerful it almost made my knees buckle washed over. "Me? That's wonderful news." "It is," she said. "Oh, it brings us to another matter. Leo's departure leaves the account director position vacant. His entire portfolio of clients is now without a lead." She paused, her sharp eyes studying my face. "The position is yours. It's a significant promotion, a major step up in responsibility. But you've more than earned it. You've been tested by fire, and you did not break." I was stunned. An apology, my job back, and now this. A promotion into the very role my brother had occupied. The irony was so thick, so poetic, it was almost overwhelming. "I accept," I said, my voice steady. "I knew you would," she said, a small, genuine smile finally appearing on her face. "Your new office is already being prepared. It's the corner one on this floor, the one with the mountain view, Leo's office." Of course it was. An hour later, I was standing in the center of my new office, his office. It was larger than my old one. The view of Mount Rainier, clear and majestic in the distance now that the rain had stopped. The faint, cloying scent of his cologne still lingered in the air. His nameplate was gone from the door, leaving behind a blank silver rectangle. I sat down in the large leather chair behind the massive desk, his desk, and looked at the empty space where the photo of my smiling parents used to be. The feeling wasn't triumph. It wasn't the sweet, satisfying taste of revenge I might have expected. It was a strange, hollow, and deeply complicated sadness. I had not sought this outcome. I had not plotted his downfall. I had simply done my job, and he had self-destructed in my orbit, a victim of his own petty, pathetic insecurities. I felt a profound sense of pity for him, for the weakness that had driven him to such a desperate, foolish act. He had been my brother, my protector, my rival, and now he was just gone. My new company phone, sitting on the clean, empty desk, buzzed. It was a text message from my mother. My heart sank. I knew, with a sickening certainty, what was coming. He had called them, and he had, of course, given them his version of the story. "Mom, your brother just called us. He is hysterical. He says you've got him fired." I don't know what you did or what lies you told, but I am sick with what you have done. How could you do this to your own family? To your brother? We are on our way to his apartment now.
Your father?
And I are deeply, deeply disappointed in you. I read the message once, then twice. The familiar, crushing weight of their reflexive blame, their immediate assumption of my guilt and his innocence settled over me. The old Evie, the one who had existed just a week ago, would have been devastated. She would have called, crying, trying to explain, to defend herself, to manage their feelings, to absorb their disappointment. But I was not the old Evie. I had been through the fire, and it had forged something new in me. I looked at the text. Message on the screen, at the unjust, unthinking accusation from a mother who had never once in my entire life taken my side. Then I looked around the room. I looked at the view of the mountain. I looked at the empty space on the desk where I would put my own photos, my own life. I looked at the door where, in a few minutes, a new nameplate would be installed. Evelyn Hayes, account director. I had a choice. I could engage. I could spend the rest of my weekend, my life, fighting for their approval, trying to make them understand a truth they were determined not to see. Or I could choose myself. I could choose my own peace. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, I deleted the entire message thread. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't send an angry reply. Simply erased it. Their drama, their blame, their toxic, one-sided loyalty, it was their problem to solve. Not mine. My work was here. I had not sought this revenge. But I would not, for 1 second, apologize for the karmic justice that had found its own way. My brother had tried to get me fired. And in the end, his actions had given me his job, his office, and a profound, unshakable, and beautifully quiet freedom from the weight of his shadow. I turned back to my computer, the future of my career. Bright and clear before me, and I got to work. 3 months passed. The chaotic, adrenaline-fueled weeks of the investigation and its aftermath settled into a new, powerful rhythm. I was no longer the embattled project manager. I was the account director. I now occupied the corner office. On the 35th floor, Leo's old office, but I had exorcised his ghost from it. The lingering scent of his cologne was long gone, replaced by the faint, clean smell of the potted olive tree I had placed by the window. The walls, once bare, now held framed architectural prints of Seattle's iconic buildings. It was my space. Now, the view of Mount Rainier on the rare, clear day the city offered was a constant, calming presence. The story of Leo's spectacular, self-inflicted downfall had become a quiet, cautionary legend within the company, but it was no longer the subject of open gossip. I had proven myself in my new role. The client portfolio I had inherited was thriving under my detail-oriented management, and the Aperture Labs account was a roaring success. I had earned the respect of my colleagues, not just for my work, but for the quiet, steely grace with which I had weathered the storm. I had won, but victory, I discovered, is a quiet and complicated thing. There was no celebratory parade. There was only the steady, demanding work of my new position and the vast, echoing silence from my family. I had not spoken to my parents or to Leo since the day he was fired. They had tried to call, of course, a flurry of angry, then pleading, then guilt-ridden calls that I had systematically ignored. Eventually, they had stopped. The silence was a relief, but it was also a heavy, empty space in my life. A constant reminder of the amputation I had been forced to perform, the final echo of my old life. Arrived on a rainy Tuesday in an unassuming interoffice mail envelope. My assistant placed it on my desk. It was from HR, with a small note attached. Found this while cleaning out the old occupant's desk drawers. Figured it might belong to you. My brow furrowed. I opened the unsealed envelope. Inside was not a document, but a single old, slightly faded photograph. I picked it up. 'Twas a picture of two children on a dock, squinting into the summer sun. A boy of about 14 with a cocky, confident grin had his arm slung around. A smaller 10-year-old girl with big, nerdy glasses and a gappy-toothed, joyful smile. The boy was Leo. The girl was me. It was from a family vacation to Lake Chelan, years before the real poison of his jealousy had taken root. I remembered that day. Kay had just learned to water ski, and he had spent the entire afternoon patiently trying to teach me, holding the rope steady, cheering me on every time I managed to stand up for a few seconds before spectacularly wiping out. In the photo, we weren't rivals, weren't a success and a failure. We were just a brother and a sister, happy on a summer day. I sat there in my big, important office, staring at this ghost from a happier past, and felt a wave of profound, unexpected grief wash over me. I wasn't grieving for the bitter, insecure man who had tried to ruin my career. I was grieving for the boy in the photograph, the brother I once had, or the brother I had always wished he could be. I was grieving for the fact that this happy, carefree memory now felt like a relic from a lost civilization. An artifact that had no place in the cold, hard reality of our present. My new office phone rang, its polite, corporate chime startling. Me, I glanced at the caller ID. Restricted number. Against my better judgment, fueled by the wave of melancholy from the photograph, I answered it. Hello, V. The voice on the other end was small, hesitant. It was my mother. I was silent for a long moment, my throat tight. Hi, Mom, I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. I know you don't want to talk to us, she began, her words tumbling out in a sad, tired rush. And I understand. I do. But I had to call your brother. Leo, he moved back home. I closed my eyes. Of course he had. He's not doing well, Evie, she continued, and for the first time. I didn't hear manipulation in her voice, only a mother's genuine, weary pain. He lost the apartment. Can't find another job. Not in his field. The story. It's followed him. He stays in his room all day. He won't talk to anyone. She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. He told us everything, honey. What he did, why he did it, the lies he told us. This was new, an admission. A crack in the fortress of their denial. We were wrong, she said, her voice cracking. We should have listened to you. We should have, I don't know. Should have been better parents? I'm so sorry. The apology, the one I had longed for my entire life, had finally come. But it didn't feel like a victory. It just felt sad. It was a confession delivered from the ruins. Long after the war was over, I know it's too much to ask, she said, her voice dropping to a plea. But he's your brother. He's so lost. Maybe if you just called him. And there it was, the request. The familiar gravitational pull back into my old role as the fixer, the one who was supposed to make everything okay. The old Evie, the one who existed just 3 months ago, would have been torn apart by this. The guilt, the duty, the desperate need to heal the wound it would have consumed her. But as I sat in my new office, holding the picture of the boy who no longer existed, I felt a new, quiet strength. I could feel sadness for them without taking responsibility for their choices. "Mom," I said, and my voice was gentle, but it was also unshakably firm. "I'm sorry to hear that Leo is struggling. I truly am. And I hope, for his own sake, that he finds the help he needs to figure his life out." I took a breath. But that help can't come from me. My role in his life and his role in mine. It's over. I can't fix this for him. And I can't fix it for you. All I can do is wish you well. It was the hardest, kindest, and most honest thing I had ever said to her. I was offering compassion, but I was drawing a boundary of steel. She was silent for a long time on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was just a whisper. "I see," she said. "Okay, honey, you take care of yourself." "You too, Mom," I said, and I hung up the phone. I sat in the quiet of my office for a long time. I looked at the old photograph in my hand one last time, the two smiling, sunburned children who had no idea of the wreckage their future held. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my new, empty desk, a drawer for personal things. I placed the photo inside, face down. I was not throwing the memory away. I was archiving it. It was a part of my story, my history. But it did not belong on my desk. It did not belong in my present. I closed the drawer, the sound a soft, final click. I turned my chair to face the window, looking out at the majestic, snow-capped peak of Mount Rainier, a permanent, unmovable feature on the horizon. The past was the past. My desk was a clean slate, and the view from here was finally, beautifully clear.